By far the most requested video that I've had, the most abundant comment that I've seen in the videos is what's going on with the Johnson-Su Bioreactors. Today we are going to find out, because 1 year ago, this bioreactor right here was filled with coarse, chunky wood chips. I've added worms, I've added water, and we've added a lot of time. How much have those wood chips broken down inside this bioreactor? That's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna find out by opening it up and taking a look inside. But before we look inside, let's first look at the outside and see how this reactor's held up in the Southern California sun for the past 12 months. So far, this bioreactor has held up very well in the elements. The biggest thing I was worried about was this landscape fabric. This isn't a woven felt, this is more of a pressed felt landscape fabric. Now it's pretty heavy duty. I can rip it if I try. And I thought, well, is this gonna make it a year? The answer is yes, it's easily made it a year. How much of the wood chips actually broken down? I'm not sure. What I've learned doing this over the past year is it's a lot like baking a cake. You can see the outside, you can observe the outside, but you can't really tell what's going on the inside. Just like you could burn a cake by leaving it in the oven too long, yet having the center be raw, I'm not sure what I'm gonna see when I open this up. When I look at the top, it still looks pretty rough, so I don't know what I'm gonna find. Another big curiosity that I have is, where have the worms gone? I've added a lot of worms. Have they migrated down deeper into the pile? Are they in the center of the pile? Have they multiplied? Did they all die off? What is the worm population going to look like in this pile? And the other thing is moisture. How moist is the center of this pile going to be? The outside looks dry despite having landscape fabric on it. Could be expected here. We get a lot of wind, it's a drier climate, a lot of sunlight. I would expect the contents to be drier. So I'm curious to see what the core of the pile looks like. Is it wet? Is it wormy? How much is it broken down? So let's open the reactor up, take a look inside the cake, have a taste, and hopefully it's something that is worthy of a Paul Hollywood handshake. Looking with the outside and sticking with the cake metaphor, this looks underbaked. It looks like you could use a lot more time in the reactor. I mean, some of these wood chips look just like they did on day one. Now, these results aren't totally surprising given what went into the reactor. These were coarse, chunky wood chips. They're gonna take several years probably to break down. So I don't think I was expecting them to be fully broken down, but I did wanna see some breakdown. Now again, that's the outside of the cake. Let's get into the center and see what that looks like. Getting into the center, it actually looks quite different. It's white frosting on a chocolate cake. This is much blacker, it's much darker, it's a lot more moist. I can see some worm activity happening in here. So I think what we had was just this lighter, drier skin on a pile, like you would expect on any compost pile, yet there was breakdown happening in the center. So while the center of the pile looks like it's broken down quite a bit, I definitely wouldn't consider it done. This has to go back in the oven. It has to cook more in the reactor. It probably has to cook for another year before I have really good results. And you might be thinking, damn, another year? And I'm saying, yeah, another year. Wood chips just take a long time to break down. There's nothing different about the bioreactor that would really speed that up. The fungi that break down the wood chips are just going to take time to break those chemical bonds and turn it into something that we would call compost. Where do we go from here? I'm going to put the ring back around the outside, put all this material back in, and just let it sit for another year. And we'll come back then and see what it looks like. 2 years to finish compost. That sounds crazy, and to some of you it might, but we all have to work with the materials that we're given in the climate that we operate in. In the landscape of the Pacific Northwest, this might break down a lot faster. In areas like Arizona, maybe it's even a lot slower. So you have to work with where you're at. You also have to work with what you're given. And in my case, I would love to fill these bioreactors with leaves from deciduous trees that I could collect in the fall. But we don't have those types of trees out here in abundance, so I can't get those leaves. They just don't exist, so I have to work with what I have. That's why that bioreactor is filled with ground up palm trees, something you might not have access to, and this one is filled with wood chips. These are abundant. So given that this is my material, given that these are my conditions, I just have to work with it and wait. Now, if you did want faster results, you'd have to go to a lower form of carbon. Think manure, grass clippings, leaves, something like that. If you could put those materials in there, you get different biology working on them. They'll break down faster and you could get compost quicker. So the results that I got today aren't necessarily a resultant of the bioreactor itself. That didn't affect the speed. Really, the materials that went in are what's going to dictate the speed at which compost comes out. Easy to break down stuff comes out quick. Harder to break down stuff comes out a lot longer. So think about the materials that you have to work with. Think about the climate that you're working in. Fill up your bioreactor with those in that climate and set your expectations accordingly. This isn't going to happen overnight. It is going to take time, and yes, good things are worth the wait. Thanks for watching. Until next time, be nice, be thankful, and do the work.